Welcome back to the show. I'm Jenny McCarthy Wahlberg. Joining me is a very, very special guest. I hold him way up high because he is the reason, you guys, that my show went from originally dirty, raunchy, sexy humor to a more spiritually evolved version of myself. I mean, I won't give him all the credit, but he gets a lot of it, let me tell you. He came into my life because I asked Archangel Michael, I said, please do what you do best and show me the way. Help me find someone that could help me get my shit together. You know what I mean? And then I also had Donnie along my side because he's my own Archangel Michael. And together we sat with the most wonderful therapist named Robert Jackman. I call him Bob. And he's changed our lives, not only me and Donnie's, but also my family, my friends, and everyone that kind of knows me. I became a better person because of it. So I wanted to have him on this show. I wanted to have him on my final week of doing this radio show as a nod to him and a thank you. And I want you guys to also participate by getting his book because it is something that Donnie and I hold a lot of value to. We've done it. We've done the work, and obviously it's working. The book is called Healing Your Lost Inner Child. I'm going to say it again, Healing Your Lost Inner Child. And that is available on Amazon. And he also has a companion workbook that you guys can write down your thoughts and your feelings, inspired exercises to heal your codependent relationships. Come on. We know people like that if we're not talking about you. It's available now on Amazon. Robert Jackman, Bob, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you for your kind words that you said before. That was really sweet.
Well, it's all true. So it's really easy to tell the truth. I'm so grateful because you're so good. You know, I moved back to this area. I actually grew up on the south side of Chicago. So the place that we live in now, St. Charles, I don't really know that many people. So I do rely on my kind of inner guidance to say, show me the way, you know, and I looked up some people and was like, okay, I'm attracted to this person. And I read your little bio and I thought he is going to do the trick. And I believe I looked up codependent relationships. Is that your specialty?
It really is. It's I consider myself a codependent in recovery, which means that I've worked for most of my adult life to try to heal that part of me. You know, so codependency, you know, shows up in our life and we learn these codependent skills, as I call them, in our childhood to help us cope with a dysfunctional environment and to help us really navigate through some really difficult situations.
Because it's like core trauma that we went through in childhood and let's give an example of what that might look like in a childhood that people can go, oh, I kind of get it. So maybe someone in the family was volatile or an alcoholic or something. And there was one particular child that wanted to make peace, wanted to be the peacekeeper. Or, I mean, that'd be one example. And then as that peacekeeper grows up, what does that look like? How does that manifest in adulthood?
So that peacekeeper, which is a great example, that's really part of my story. That peacekeeper grows up and really wants to avoid conflict, really wants everyone to like or love him or her. And they get really lost in this codependent dance, what I also call in the book, these wounded tools. So we learn these wounded tools growing up, like you said, growing up in an alcoholic household or a dysfunctional household. And what we're doing is we're trying to come up with, I call them our homegrown version of trying to make sense of a very complicated environment. And so we bring those into our adult life.
And would it manifest also by the partner you choose? Might not seem like, let's say, your father or your mother, but right. The energy, the essence of the energy is the same, volatile. There's some type of abusive, not healthy relationship that you are attracted to because that's all you know, correct?
Because that's what you know, right? So we bring these wounded tools into our adult life, into our adult relationships, and subconsciously we're choosing people that match that wounding. So we're not going out and saying, gosh, I want to find someone who will abuse me. But we choose a person because we grew up in an environment where we were abused in some way, let's say. And so we carry that victimhood mentality and we attract an abuser into our life. We attract someone who's not very nice to us, because we know at a deep level how to navigate, how to show up for that person and say, oh, I know what you're like. I can figure you out. I can adjust myself. I can make myself smaller to fit into your world.
Boy, that's so true. You know, I wanted to bring on my other half, the love of my life, Donnie Wahlberg. Donnie, look who's here. It's Bob.
Hi, Donnie.
Bob.
It's so good to see you both together. I love this.
I called him and I said, Donnie, you know who I have on the show today? He's like, who? I'm like, I have Bob. And he said, can I come? I said, of course you can. We just have so much love and respect for you. But I wanted Donnie to definitely join me on this interview because he also has learned a lot from you. I'll not put words in your mouth.
Thank
no,
you.
I go ahead, Bob. Talk. I'd rather listen to you talk than me.
Well, you guys are you're great examples. I'm so proud of you both because you're great examples of how hard you worked. You went inside of yourselves, and you said, I want to do this hard work. I want to heal. And that's really what it takes to sort of look at our childhood, look at our wounded childhood responses, and to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to feel better about myself and about my life.
Yeah. It's one of the greatest things that I think Jenny and I both learned in the way you referenced it for us that was very helpful is a lot of times in our adult state, we respond to things with our childhood toolbox. And we reach for our tool belt for responses and reactions to things. And even our emotional response to things, is based on who we were and the coping mechanisms we developed at that young age. And, so a lot of times now that we're 50, I'm 51, when something happens and I want to try to resolve it, I unwittingly behave like I did as a child. And I discovered it. You brought that to our attention. It wasn't until one day, Jenny and I we don't fight, we just get quiet and one of us will get quiet and usually me. and I went quiet one day and I went in the other room. I said, I'm just going to go in the other room. And I don't even think I said it. I just did it and closed the door. And I realized when I was laying there, I was like, if she comes through the door, which is all I want, for her to come reach through the barbed wire and come get me, right. I'm probably just that won't be enough. Then I'll pull back and want more. And what I realized is after you mentioning the toolbox and being 8 years old, when I was sitting there in that room, I was like, oh my God, this is what I did when I was a little kid with 9 kids in the house. And I needed my mom's attention. My dad was screaming and hitting kids and everyone was in a fight and everything was chaotic. And I needed her love and attention to feel like I mattered, in that house. And I literally was doing that. I would go in the bathroom, lock the door, and flush the toilet over and over again until she realized, who keeps flushing the toilet? And then go knock on the door and she'd come in and go, oh, it's okay. And that would be the only attention I'd get from her throughout the course of the day with all the stress and insanity they had, feeding 9 kids and my dad's drinking and, all the different stuff. And I realized I was doing it as an adult. And your teaching taught me. I thought I'm just being a man. I'm going to go, I'll show her. I'm going to go, she'll have to wonder where I am in the house. It was so stupid. But I didn't realize that's the tool I had. I reached for a screwdriver when I needed a chainsaw,
That's such a great example, Donnie.
You were very naturally using this wounded tool that worked for you in childhood. And you just brought it into your adult life. You're like, well, I'm just going to use this with Jenny because it worked in my family of origin household. And so you're like, I'll just use this. And of course, it doesn't work. No. So that's a great example.
Yeah.
It really is. And I'm going to share something that really helped me too, which was having an alcoholic father and my mom. While the chaos was happening, she'd put a smile on her face, and we would look to her face to say to be like, okay, we're going to look to mom to get to figure out what's going on. And she always would put a smile on her face. Now, she of course was putting a smile on her face to make it easier in her mind on the girls. If I smile, it will seem not as bad. But the feeling in my belly of the chaos that was happening did not match my mother's face, which would be very confusing as I grew older and was seeing chaos and putting a smile on my face, not connecting those two. Can you expand on that more? But that is a real light bulb for me.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. That's a great example, because in that example in your childhood, you learn to really push your emotions down. You learn to say, okay, I'm not going to pay attention to what I really am feeling. I'm just going to put a smile on my face like what mom has and get through this experience. And so with that, you really got all these mixed messages, these crossed wires when it comes to boundary setting. So you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do what everybody else wants, push my feelings down. And that's how we really get disconnected from ourselves, from the authentic self. And we don't have good boundaries anymore. And of course, then that goes in our poor boundaries, goes in our toolbox. We bring that into our adult life. And then we're like, okay, I'm going to use the same thing I used with mom. I'm just going to kind of shut down and go along and be the peacemaker and put a smile on my face. And of course, that gets us into really big trouble. So what worked for us in childhood, those responses were really specific to that environment. And that's why we have to change them, heal them in our adult life, because if we don't, we're just going to get the same responses over and over. And we're going to attract what you said earlier. We're going to attract the same type of person or people into toxic people into our life over and over, that we're replaying out these dramas over and over.
That's right. Unless you do the work, I'm going to plug the book again. His book is called Healing Your Lost Inner Child. He also has a companion workbook with the same title, Healing Your Lost Inner Child, companion workbook, inspired exercises to heal your codependent relationships. You guys can find that on Amazon. No, it's true, because like in your workbook, the one of the things that you had Donnie and I both do was write letters to that child. So I had to write a letter to that child explaining to her in that particular memory what was really going on. And when you told me to go do it, I thought, like, how could this work? Like, who know? Just hearing it, going like, all right, I'll try it, since I like him, I'll give it a try. And then I sat down and I did it, and I couldn't believe how well it worked. It's not a right there magical, there's a semi-release, and then the next day you feel a little bit more, and the next day you feel a little bit more. Did you find that to be true with yourself, or was that just my experience with writing the letters?
Well, that was completely my experience, doing this over the years in many different types of environments. So everything that I'm asking the reader to do in the book, I've done myself. And like you said, it is kind of weird at first, because you're writing from the child's perspective. You're writing from, in my case, my 10-year-old little boy perspective to my adult self. And then the adult self writes back. But what we're doing with this is we're forming a connection. We're getting used to how that younger wounded part sounds and shows up, so that we can tell in the moment, in real time, okay, here I go again. Here's that part showing up again. So that's why we do the letter writing, to form this connection. And also, like what you were saying, how you're reassuring that younger wounded part that, okay, things are going to be okay. I'm setting boundaries now. I know how to set healthy boundaries, and I can protect all of us, because that lost inner child keeps on showing up until we set really strong, healthy boundaries.
And then,
one of the things that's wonderful about it too, and doing this work, and it's really profound too, is that the pathway that it opens to forgiveness as well. Because when you go back as a child, and it sounds complicated maybe to someone out there, but just thinking, like, go back to that time when you were a child and think about, write the things that you might have said, like, I'm scared, my dad's screaming and he's throwing bottles around the house and I don't understand what's happening. Really try to connect to that and come from that place. And when you do, you you do it as a child, but then the adult writes back. And what
Right.
in the writing back, you start to say, it's okay. Dad's doing the best he can do. He's not nice, but it doesn't mean he doesn't love you. You have this adult perspective going in, and it actually creates this pathway to not only heal yourself, but release a lot of what you're holding on to without maybe consciously saying, I forgive you, whoever had me in this, dysfunctional, chaotic situation. But it really creates a pathway to forgiveness, which is really the ultimate freedom, right?
Well, you're right. And I like how you position that, Donnie, because it is about, it works on such a deep level within us. When we do this work, we're connecting with an ancient kind of part of ourselves, a part of ourselves that has been with us for a long time and has tried to protect us for a long time. So that part has a lot of wisdom. So I say it multiple times in the book, be gentle with yourself as you go through this process and really honor that part, because that part has really tried to help us so much. So really honor those tools, honor how that part is showing up. So it's not about, trying to push it away or ignore it. It's about saying, going through and creating a timeline, identifying your age of wounding, and then starting the letter writing exercises, going the back and forth, and then developing the strong boundaries. And then it's about the integration. So ultimately, it's about that younger wounded part healing and then integrating with the adult self.
Yeah, a lot of times our forgiveness isn't even forgiveness, right? It's guilt. It's that codependency. It's like, all right, I'm just going to move on from whatever resentment I have, and I'll go to the family function.
Because we're non-confrontational also.
Right. Yeah, and these feelings start bubbling up. But when you actually go through the healing process, you almost don't even have to be aware of the fact that you forgave. It kind of just happens,
There's there's a magical process that takes place with this. If you're doing the work and letting it unfold, you really are opening yourself up. Of course, it takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to do that. But when we do that, the gifts in return are phenomenal. There's an emotional freedom that we bring into our life from doing this kind of deep work. And, it does take effort, but I wrote the book in a very easy to read, accessible kind of way, because I didn't want this sort of heavy book. But there's a lot of material in the book, and each chapter has stories of people who have seen me over the years. They agreed to let me use their story in the book anonymously, and it really shows their path. Everything that we're talking about tonight, it lays out how their wounding was showing up in childhood, their dysfunctional family of origin, and how they carried that into adulthood. And like what you were saying before, Jenny, they were choosing partners that weren't always good for them based on that wounding.
Well said. And I do love learning by example. To me, that is like the best way to identify your behaviors. Like, oh, that reminds me of me, and I connect to that. And Donnie's really good at reminding me about that inner child. Like sometimes I'll forget, but he's such a great example of that, because he'll point out his own. He'll be like, oh, 7-year-old Donnie's having a tantrum right now. I can hear him, and I'm just going to tell him that we're safe. We're safe. And all's okay. Yep. And I'm always like, oh my God, the fact that I feel so lucky and blessed to be, Donnie's wife, and also grateful that he does want to do the work. And to me, that is a true sign of a healthy marriage. And I want you to speak on behalf of, couples that come in that are first brave enough to come in, because a lot of people are scared to come in, but talk about how well it works. I really want you to sell it, Bob.
So when folks come in, I'll ask them kind of what's going on in their life, what keeps on showing up in their life. Because what I'm looking for are the patterns. I'm looking for patterns and themes. And so from there, then we kind of build from that. And a lot of times, I'll take them through the process I outline in the book. And then sometimes I'll say, they'll give an example. Like this one gentleman, he came in and he was really, and his story's in the book. And he would get really upset and text his wife just obsessively about how he was so upset. Basically, he was throwing a tantrum. And what was happening is that his wife would then come back and try to reason with him intellectually. But here he was, his 5-year-old was having an emotional tantrum. And so they weren't meeting each other at all. And so when I sort of, explained to both of them, okay, this is what's happening. This is how you guys are missing each other. And she got it right away. He got it right away. And then they were able to really come up with a better way to communicate. She was able to not go to this intellectualizing place and be gentle and loving with him. And he was able to then self-soothe and calm down. So that's just one example. I mean,
it's good because when you see your partner in those moments, if you understand that that is their core trauma, that is their inner child, and you see them as that 7-year-old, how can you possibly have anything but compassion for your partner in that moment?
Exactly. Empathy, yeah.
Yes.
Right. That's what this work really brings out within the person themselves, and then hopefully with their partners. And you guys have done a great job of really honoring yourselves and honoring each other. So you're able to have that courageous vulnerability with each other, where you're saying, look, this part is getting activated. This part is showing up. My 7-year-old self or whatever is coming forward, and I'm having a hard day. And so that's perfect, because when you do that, you're really acknowledging in real time, this is what's happening, and I need a little extra care today. So
sorry, Bob, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you finished. Did you want to finish or?
No, I'm done.
Okay. I was going to say 2 things kind of just popped in my head, a kind of a revelation in that, when a lot of times we hear our friends give us advice, like, like a guy or a girl will say, I always end up with the same type of person, a player or this or that. And it's like, it is kind of just light bulbing off in my mind. Like, that's kind of because we go to what we know that we can use our tools with, right? It's kind of like, oh, I know this relationship. I grew up in a household like this. I'm going to go to that type of personality because I have the resources to navigate that. And it's also like, and sometimes we run away for those healthy relationships because
you don't have the toolbox.
We don't really have those tools for that. We don't really have them. And, we don't even know how to feel worthy of that. Is that accurate to sort of frame it that way? Is that kind of what creates the pattern?
That's beautiful. Yeah, because in childhood, we're setting up the emotional template for our adult life. And a lot of these stories in the book, you can read them and you can see how this person really is setting themselves up to be with an emotionally unavailable person, or to be with an abuser, or whatever it is, through their family of origin dynamic, through their mom and dad, through how they were, or through, let's say, experiences at school. And so it's we're a product of our experiences, nature and nurture. So it's all of this coming together really, and we just, like you said, we bring these tools into our adult life, like, okay, well, this is what I know. So we come by this honestly, I like to say, because we're really just doing our best with what we have. Mm-hmm. I didn't set out to, bring narcissistic people into my life when I was in my 20s, but that's sure as heck what was happening, because that's sort of how my interaction was with my dad. So I knew how to interact with the narcissist.
It's that chaotic vibration energy is that frequency. Oh, I know the station. I know the station very well. It's familiar and cozy, even though some people may call it chaotic, including my friends. What the fuck are you thinking? How can you be with that person? But it's familiar. It's so wild. And another thing I had a flash from our sessions was about the armor. You talked about how I had built this armor because of the way I looked at my mom with a smile on her face, bearing things. That's how I got through a lot of hardships in my life. And you said that was very handy. Like that actually got me through some real tough freaking times in my life. And to be grateful, because it did help me. It made me a survivor. But now it's time to take the armor off. And that was a big revelation, but there's no way that armor wouldn't have come off. I think if I didn't meet someone that I felt safe enough to take the armor off, and that was Donnie Wahlberg. I felt like I can go finally click and put that heavy ass armor down and open my heart and be vulnerable and show my true emotions instead of the smile on my face, even though I'm dying inside. That was a big one for me, Bob.
And well, thank you for saying that. And this is just a testament of all of your hard work and your insight into yourself. And you were able to put the armor down because you were able to develop new healthy boundaries to take place of these old, outmoded, what I call in the book, bubble boundaries, which is that armor where we're keeping everybody at arm's length. Don't get too close. So we're keeping everybody at arm's length. We have that armor on all the time. And like you said, we developed that in childhood for a specific reason, brought that into adulthood, and we're like, why the heck am I using this today? So we just go back to these old tools thinking that we have to use them today, but we really don't. We can learn healthier tools to use.
Donnie had the moat and I had armor. Together we were a perfect pair. I do have to wrap this up. Any last words, Donald?
Thank you, Bob. Just thanks for all the wisdom and love that you brought to our life and to so many lives. And for everyone out there, struggling or that this is resonating with, grab the book and don't be afraid to open your heart to heal it, to heal yourself. And the damage that's been with you your whole life, because it's so liberating and it's scary to think about, but it's honestly a wonderful, wonderful journey to take.
It's true. Well said, Donnie. If you want more peace in your life, if you want more love in your life, then you owe it to yourself to do this work, because it really is. It's heaven. It's heaven on earth. The book, again, is called Healing Your Lost Inner Child. You guys can find that on Amazon. There's also the workbook that goes with it, Healing Your Lost Inner Child Companion Workbook, Inspired Exercises to Heal Your Codependent Relationships. It's available now. You guys can also see more of Robert at robertjackmantherapy.com. Bob, thank you so much. And I'm sure this is just a to be continued down the road.
When we come for therapy in 2 weeks.
When my inner child starts going,
exactly.
Love you, Bob.
Thank you both so much. It's great to see you both.